Dylan Raiola will struggle if Ohio State's pass rush cranks up the intensity.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, your daily Ohio State Buckeyes podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Na'eem Offord, Jahkeem Stewart, and Matt Rhule find themselves in today's show, as well as Dylan Raiola, because this freshman quarterback will struggle this weekend if Ohio State's pass rush cranks up the intensity. And that's been the biggest thing we have talked about on the past 2 weeks is the defense and the pass rush and how things need to change. And a lot of that goes into why Ryan Day is unhappy. He has spent more time during the bye week with the defensive coaches, Larry Johnson, James Laurinaitis, and all the other coaches there, trying to figure out what the issue is, figuring out and pointing out the issue, and then putting a plan together to fix the issue. And it all goes back to the pass rush. I don't care if you're a novice in watching football, if you've been watching Ohio State for a really long time. If you watch this defense and you compare them to some of the elite defenses in the sport this year, you will find one thing lacking from this defense. They don't get home all the time. And it's kind of confusing as Ohio State has a lot of great players, guys that go off to the NFL, and that'll probably have long careers, not just on the D-line, but all over the defense. Caleb Downs, Ransom, Burke. You got a lot of guys out here that are going to go off to the NFL, make millions of dollars, and have long NFL careers. That doesn't mean this defense is bulletproof, because it's not. There are issues. There are positions that need help. But even more than I think the linebackers need help, the pass rush needs to change. And I'm looking at Tuimoloau, looking at Sawyer, also looking at the coaches, because this is a problem that's been around for a while. We saw it a lot this year where Ohio State's pass rush doesn't get home all the time. The numbers don't show that the players are playing like we think they should play. And I'm looking at Tuimoloau and Sawyer, and they're seeing a young quarterback, Dylan Raiola, a guy this year so far who has played some decent ball. He almost has 1,600 receiving yards, 1,600 passing yards on the year. He's thrown 9 touchdowns. He's thrown 6 interceptions. Over the past 2 games, he's thrown 4 of his 6 interceptions. He also has not thrown a passing touchdown over the past couple weeks. So he's currently in a slump. You're a true freshman. You've been starting since day one. You're expected to hit the wall at some point in time. Go back and look at Travion Henderson during his freshman year. What will you find? He hit a wall at some point during that year. It's going to happen. And with that wall being right in front of him right now and him not getting around it or even through it, the Buckeyes defense right now is hungry. It's eager to get back on the field. Yeah, there was a bye week, so they had to deal with a lot of the issues that happened previously this year a little bit longer, but that wasn't a problem. What we're talking about right now, though, is Ohio State taking a step forward, getting better, doing what is needed to take your game to the next level. And yeah, it's good. You're going to call out some players. Going to look at your starters, and you'll look at guys like Mitchell Melton. Why is he not playing more? Kenyatta Jackson Jr. Should he be in the rotation? Should he play a little bit more? Caden Corey. I do believe he should play more. I think those 3 guys should be in the rotation a little bit more, maybe on the field together with Sawyer and Tuimoloau to have your rushman package, move your D-ends to D-tackle, and then bring the fresh guys on the outside. What are you doing? Changing things up. Oh, that jack position that we heard about when Jim Knowles came to Ohio State, but all of a sudden it's been rarely utilized. Do I expect it to be used on Saturday? Yeah, I do. I actually expected it to happen. Knowles' first year, Knowles' second year, even this year. I have expected that to happen. My gut says they probably won't use Sawyer, and they probably won't use Tuimoloau. They might bring somebody fresh, CJ Hicks, off the bench, because I think that spot is ideal for him. Now, I think if Ohio State was running a traditional 4-2-5 and they were not having Knowles, who wants to be more creative with the defense, I think CJ Hicks would play next year. I don't know if he's ready for that outside the Will or the Mike backer spot right now, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's no issue with saying that right now. But when you have a guy on the bench that can contribute now and you know his role and his skill set is ideal for that, play him. I mean, it's going to help you crank up the intensity as you're going to get into a really tough part of the season. As I believe the next 4 games, you have Nebraska at home, which this game should be a blowout. I mean, if you go back and look at the film, you look at what Ohio State's done previously, this game should be a blowout. You also have Penn State next week. I believe the following week is Northwestern, and then Indiana comes to town. So what you're basically saying is over a 4-week span, you're playing 2 ranked teams. You're playing Nebraska, who's 5-2. You're playing Northwestern in Wrigley Field. So that's a little special in and of itself. Ohio State has a stretch where they can just remind everybody on the field, not off of it, that they're Ohio State. This is still one of the best teams in the country. Show up against Nebraska and quickly take care of business. Go to Happy Valley and make the Beavers fans upset, the Nittany Lions fans upset. Go wherever you got to go and just show everybody and their mama that the Buckeyes are still for real. Yeah, that 1-point loss does not kill morale, will not get us off track, or will not mess up the path we are on for this year. Yeah, it's a blemish. It's not the end of our story. The story is not complete. The Buckeyes aren't done. And it all goes back to the pass rush getting better. And if the pass rush gets better, what we'll be talking about in the postcast on Saturday and then on Monday and Tuesday of next week is that Ohio State is taking steps in the right direction to get better in an area that desperately needs to get better. I don't know if Tuimoloau or Sawyer will be the leading sack guys on Saturday or if it'll be somebody off the bench. I don't really know. I don't care. All we're looking for is more pressure consistently over and over and over and over again. And as sometimes there are guys on the field that you feel them just because they're all over the place making plays. Ohio State's pass rush needs to make sure Dylan Raiola literally feels them over and over and over and over again. Because what we see earlier this year against Western Michigan, against Marshall, against Michigan State, once Ohio State's pass rush gets home a couple times and starts to over and over and over and over again to the quarterback, just hitting him over and over and over, it's game over. Now imagine if Ohio State's pass rush gets to Dylan Raiola early. If Jim Knowles is dialing things up in a different way than he has previously and it's working, and Raiola starts getting hurt over and over and over and over again, the next thing you know, he's not the guy. He's rattled again. It's 3 straight games in a row where he hasn't thrown a passing touchdown. It's 3 straight games in a row where he has thrown interceptions. What can you contribute it to? Is it the DBs? Maybe. But a good corner knows, and Denzel Burke knows, his job is easier when the guys up front are creating crazy pressure and they're getting home. That's just football 101. Denzel Burke's a great corner. A lot of those plays that he got burnt, if Ohio State put a little bit more pressure on Dillon Gabriel a couple weeks ago, Burke may have not have been burnt in the way that he was. Why? Because the pass rush was getting the job done. It all goes back to the statement I made earlier. Dylan Raiola will struggle if Ohio State's pass rush cranks up the intensity. And I got a good feeling that's going to happen Saturday afternoon in the shoe. They're calling for Scarlet Out. Scarlet Out the shoe and the all red unis, the color rush on homecoming weekend. I'm here for it. I love the creativity. I love the use of the alternate jerseys. And I also would love for that pass rush to get home and, well, kind of rattle the true freshman quarterback who was once an Ohio State commit, but ultimately decided to lean on the family ties and to play for the Cornhuskers. One thing about Nebraska is that this team consistently struggles with teams this year that fall into a very exclusive college football category. Oh, it's a category that Ohio State falls in. We'll talk about that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All the action goes down on the FanDuel Sportsbook app and at FanDuel.com. Thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen every day. Nebraska is 5-2 this year. They're a team that has had some really good moments on the football field. However, they have struggled against ranked teams in 2024. They have lost to Illinois and Indiana. Illinois was number 24. Indiana was number 16. And those are the only two games this year where Nebraska has given up more than 10 points. In all 5 of their wins, they have given up 10 points or less. There was only one game this year that they did not allow a touchdown. That was against Northern Iowa. So their defensive numbers might look a little bit different. But as we get to this point of the season, we see Illinois, a good football team, beat Nebraska. And that was a road win for Illinois. Indiana was at home. It was homecoming weekend. But they also just beat the brakes off Nebraska. So these are things that should make Ohio State fans and Ohio State just in general really confident that we have seen that Nebraska's going to struggle. Like, I don't think it's really going to be a tough thing to say. Ohio State's talent is better than Illinois'. It's better than Indiana's. Ohio State's going to be at home. They're eager to get back on the field. They're hungry. And they're going to utilize some of the holes that the Illini, that the Hoosiers exposed in Nebraska. They're going to just make them even wider, make them even bigger, and just say, okay, we saw what you did against them, but here's what you're doing against us. And what you're going to do against us is not anywhere close to what you did in those 5 wins. I'm not going to sit up here and say that Nebraska's going to struggle, that isn't going to score. I am not going to say that because I do realize how hard it is to keep a team from scoring. I will say this, though. For Ohio State to have a bounce-back game like this, and your bounce-back game is already a super hyped-up weekend because it's homecoming weekend. It's a super hyped-up weekend because Ryan Day is not happy. He has made that statement multiple times. I do think for Nebraska, they're going to need to bring their A game. It's unfortunate for Nebraska that their quarterback has literally hit a wall. It's not a bad thing. I mean, he won a game in the midst of this struggle that he's in. A 14-7 win over Rutgers. That was a home win on October 5th earlier this month. So it's not like he can't lead the team to victory while struggling. But while he is struggling and Nebraska wants to lean on him a little bit, they can't do that. And Ohio State knows that. And for Ohio State's defense, let's just keep this conversation going. For the defense, when you know you got a guy struggling and he's coming to your place, he's coming to your house, trying to play spoiler, what do you need to do? Make him feel you early. I keep seeing this clip go back around. I saw it on Instagram. I saw it on TikTok. It was from Major Wright when he was on Florida. I believe they were playing Oklahoma in the national championship. I knew it was a bowl game. But this was back in the mid-2000s. Urban was at Florida. And first play, Sam Bradford? Yeah, Sam Bradford, Oklahoma's quarterback, dropped back to pass and had a long, streaking receiver. Looked like the receiver may have been open. I mean, it was good, long pass. And Major Wright's on the other side of the field. Well, he sees the ball in the air, going and going and going. And he's like, I could have gone for the ball. But Major Wright decided to go for the receiver. And if you haven't seen this clip or you don't remember this play from the game about 15, 20 years ago, go back, look on YouTube, type Major Wright. It might pop right up. And he just levels the receiver. I forget who it was. All I remember is that Major Wright made him feel him. He wanted to send a message early. First drive of the game, or opening minutes of the game. A massive game, massive crowd. And he wanted to make sure that he felt him so that down the road throughout the game, that was in the back of his mind. I remember when I was younger, had a major disdain for the Patriots. I still got it. Tom Brady, I say it all the time, he ruined my childhood. But Tom Brady, one of those crazy Super Bowl wins, and the team, the Patriots beat the Rams this day, early 2000s, even before the major right hit. I remember watching, and it was Rodney Harrison and Ty Law and guys on the Patriots defense. This was back with the greatest show on turf. It was Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, those guys down there, Ricky Prohl, and they were just trying to get some stuff going offensively. And the Patriots said, nope, nope, nope. But they weren't saying nope with their words. They were literally smacking these Rams receivers over the middle. Back when you can go over the middle and hit somebody hard and they didn't throw a flag on you. I kind of miss those days. Y'all really do. That was when ball was fun. Ball is still fun, but, the harder hits, man, the jacked up segments on Monday Night Countdown, I miss those days, man. I really do. But I remember those guys back then realizing if we start hitting these cats early, even if it's a penalty, we're going to send a message. And that's the same thing you got to do with Dylan Raiola. But also not just Dylan Raiola. Nebraska's coming into Ohio State, and they're going to have a 3 running back system. And these running backs, it's kind of an even. It's almost even. It's not truly even, but you kind of see Dante Dowdell's number 1 back, and then Emmert Johnson's number 2, and Ramir Johnson's number 3. But in that order, that's how their stats go. Dowdell 350 on the ground and 5 touchdowns. Emmett Johnson, 231 on the ground and 1 touchdown. Ramir Johnson, 153 on the ground and 0 touchdowns, but all 3 guys are averaging 4 yards per carry or more. So they're getting a lot of stuff done on the ground, which generally is going to help Dylan Raiola. But what's one of the best things about Ohio State's defense? Their ability to stop the run. Now, I realize the last game they played, they didn't stop the run. Actually, they lost the rushing battle in the game when you compare Ohio State's rushing numbers to Oregon's rushing numbers. And we said before the game multiple times, the team that wins a rushing battle wins the game, and that's exactly what happened. Now, the running backs at Ohio State, what happened? Oregon in the second half altered the plans that Ohio State had running the ball. And that was a deciding factor. That played a big factor in the second half of Ohio State's offense, it being successful. Also limited how many possessions Ohio State had in the second half. So that is something to watch as well. But also something to watch in this game. This is just going to be like more pre-game stuff that you might find on Big Noon. And, of course, Joe Klatt is probably going to talk about it 1,000 times. I'm trying to be sarcastic, but I know it's going to come up a few. Matt Rhule and Ryan Day coached together at Temple. Ryan Day's second full-time position job was at Temple in 2006. Matt Rhule was there as a D-line coach in 2006. That Temple team went 1-11. They were not good, but those 2 guys kind of cut their teeth, if you want to say, or got their feet wet in coaching at the same place there at Temple. So that's going to be one of those things there. Even though as guys evolve, there are going to be fundamental things that coaches have early on in their careers that their peers know, especially when you're coaching with guys. That might be Matt Rhule might try to pull something out of his back pocket and say, I know Ryan Day's not running the offense completely because he's not the OC, but here's what Day might try and do to us. Same for Ryan Day. I know Matt Rhule is the head coach, but he might try to pull out this thing out of his back pocket or pull this thing out of his sleeve because these are things that we talked about that were ingrained in him early on there at Temple. So it's another one there to look at. Raiola, his struggles that should continue this weekend. The 3 running backs that Nebraska is going to utilize to kind of trip up Ohio State's defense, but also that Matt Rhule and Ryan Day, they used to coach together. And it's always fun seeing guys who used to coach together that are now head coaches battle it out on the field. Do I think we'll get – I just thought about this. I don't know if we're going to get a Greg Schiano Ryan Day moment, or I think it was a couple of years ago. One of them came across the field and started pointing in the other guy's face. I don't know if that's going to happen. Schiano and Day, they're cool. They used to coach together. But in the heat of the moment, things kind of happen that way. Nobody hopefully nobody's still upset about that moment. After the game, they realize it's just a part of the game. But I don't think Matt Rhule and Ryan Day will have any of those moments because I just don't think this game is going to be close at all. Now, Matt Rhule might be upset and want to react, but if he does, let the refs handle that. Ryan Day, just keep your cool, buddy. Just keep your cool. It'll be very, very cool to see one of the best players in the class of 2025 come to Columbus, Ohio this weekend for Ohio State's homecoming matchup with Nebraska. I'll tell you who that is next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an insurance policy, so your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. When Jahkeem Stewart decided to reclassify to the class of 2025, it was one of those things that intensified the pursuit of Ryan Day and Larry Johnson to lure Stewart from the Bayou to Columbus, Ohio. He's really talented. He's a 5-star kid. He's one of the best defensive line prospects you'll see in this cycle and probably the next cycle as well, because it doesn't matter if it was the class of 25 or next year's class. He was good, man. He has all the goods at 6'6", 270. He doesn't move like he is 6'6", 270. He is very, very powerful. He's quick off the line of scrimmage. He is one of those interior guys that every school wants. I say every school wants because he's only being recruited by the best. LSU, the local school, they're going after him. USC from Southern California, they're trying to get him. Oregon had him in Eugene when Ohio State was in town. So everybody is trying to get this man on campus. And the fact that Ohio State gets him on campus this weekend, buddy, that's huge, man. We already knew it. It was expected that Jahkeem Stewart would come to Ohio State for the game. That's his official visit. It's the weekend you want to get him, and you got him here. So cool. That's great. That's still set intact. It has not changed. But the fact you could get him twice within a 2-month span in this season is huge. But then when you add in some things that Ohio State might try to do defensively that are different, and you're going to try to show that off this weekend, knowing a guy that you drastically want to add to your 2025 recruiting class will be in town, that just makes this weekend a whole lot bigger. We have not talked a lot of recruiting this year. It's been mainly talking about ball, what Ohio State's doing on the field, what Ryan Day should do to make the team even better. But sometimes you just got to pump the brakes and stop the press and say, look, you got to just throw some recruiting in here because some stuff is just too good to not gloss over. If Ohio State is able to get Jahkeem Stewart to come all the way up north, to leave the Bayou, to come to Columbus, Ohio, to play football at Ohio State, that is a massive win. And a massive win for Larry Johnson, who we have said numerous times has missed out on some of these top recruits. We saw a couple weeks ago, Ohio State lost out on Mateo Uiagalelei. And what did Mateo do when Ohio State was in town? He played great ball, man. Like, if Mateo Uiagalelei was at Ohio State right now, it'd be very hard to keep him on the bench because all he does is make plays. And that's one thing I think this weekend is going to be great for Jahkeem Stewart with him being in town. Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton, Sawyer Tuimoloau, Jackson Jr., Melton, Kane McDonald, whatever D lineman's out there, he's going to be watching them very closely, look at the game day experience, look at to see exactly how they conduct themselves, how they show what it's like to be a Buckeye on game day. He's going to be watching all of that. And what's he going to be doing, as I would do as well? Comparing it to Oregon, comparing it to LSU, comparing it to USC, and basically asking himself, is it worth me leaving home to come play here and to play this brand of football? Those are things he's asked. That's something he's going to ask himself. And I think it's wise. Brian Smith, recruiting analyst of Locked On, he said numerous times that this is a very, very smart young man. He has his head on straight, and he's going to look at this thing in a very mature way. With that in mind, this is also a weekend where Larry Johnson can show we know what happened previously. We know some struggles we've had over the past few years. Look and see what's going to happen right now. And I say Larry Johnson because Larry Johnson and Stewart have been linked for a very long time. So that is something else there where you're looking at those two guys and Larry Johnson's linked to him. He's going to Ohio State this weekend. This could be a massive win for Ohio State's defensive line recruiting if they're able to get him. Earlier this year, I made comments about Justin Fry and how he has missed out on some O-line top recruits, which is a massive struggle. It's really, really hard to recruit offensive linemen and to lure them far away from home. But the play of the O-line this year has been a massive recruiting tool for Justin Fry. And if the D-line at Ohio State takes massive steps forward, I don't think it's they need to take massive steps. I think there are steps forward that they need to take, but let's just say they take massive steps forward. And Jahkeem Stewart sees that. That is another recruiting tool that Larry Johnson has in his back pocket. He just keep that communication going, keep that friendship going, the relationship going, and saying, you want to be coached by me? I got the tools in my bag. You want these tools to be in your bag too? Come to Columbus, Ohio, and let's put you to the test. Let's put you in the lab, and let's see what comes out. Also, what's not coming out, but what's not coming to Columbus this weekend is another top recruit, a five-star kid. This one's already committed to Ohio State. It's Na'eem Offord. And when I say Na'eem Offord, many of you that follow Buckeye recruiting are wondering, is he still coming to Ohio State? Is he still committed? Has he ditched the Buckeyes for the Auburn Tigers? Is he going to stay in down south? What's going to happen? I have not heard anything to think that he's going to change his verbal commitment. He's currently a five-star kid via 247 Sports, the number one player in the state of Alabama, the number two corner in the class as well. The number one corner in Devin Sanchez, a Houston, Texas product, is the number one corner in the class who's also committed to Ohio State. So if you got 1 and 2 in the same cycle at Ohio State, you're doing something right. And Na'eem Offord wants to be wants to be developed, and he wants to go to a place that will develop him. Tim Walton has been working hard to keep this relationship, to keep Na'eem Offord intact, and to make sure he understands this is a place for him to be. And if Ohio State keeps this thing going, this is great, man. Like, I've watched Na'eem Offord play football. There was a pick six he had. I want to say it was last weekend, and Tim Walton was in town watching him. So you're seeing a lot of things happen with Offord that Ohio State is still right there. There's rumors. You're going to hear rumors. You may search Twitter, and I saw someone, a member of his family, I believe. I don't know if it was his mom or his aunt. I don't know exactly who it was, but somebody kind of quote tweeted and said people will say anything for clicks because somebody pulled something from a recruiting show, pulled something from the show that was not in context. They made their own opinion about what they heard and said, oh, this is what the family is saying. And it's like, no. When it comes to Na'eem Offord, and people will say, oh, he took a visit here, he took a visit there. Maybe he took a visit to Auburn. Maybe he took a visit somewhere else. He is still committed to Ohio State. Ohio State is still pursuing him. I'm not sitting here saying that he is taking all these visits or he is not. I don't. I mean, I know one time he took a visit and Brian Smith and Brian told me, but Brian said no one knew it was going to happen. It just happened. And is it wrong for kids to take visits? No, absolutely not. If you were in a youngster's shoes and you were getting pulled every which way by all of these schools, top schools that got a lot of money, and that'll some may pay you to come on a visit, would you say no? I'm not saying I would. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm not saying he would or he would. I'm not saying any of that. But for some of these kids, it's hard for them to say no, especially when you got a bag in your hand with some money. And I'm not saying it's the same way as it used to be as far as with the bag men, but it might be. Na'eem Offord's a guy that Ohio State has been pursuing very, very hard. He originally planned to come for the Iowa game, and then he moved the visit to the Nebraska game, and then the move that trip to late November. What does that say? He's moving the date. He's just literally moving the date. Not Iowa, not Nebraska, late November. He's just moving the date. Why? I don't know. Talk to his family. Like, I don't try to get inside of the family conversations because that's a very personal thing. That is their decision. That's his decision. Move the date. Still committed. Tim Walton's still grinding. Ryan Day trusts that the OG, as they call him, is getting the job done. Cool. Perfectly fine. But you got Stewart coming this weekend. Na'eem Offord changed his mind. Is not coming this weekend. For Stewart to come or for Offord to come. It doesn't mean, one, that Stewart's going to commit to Ohio State, and for Offord to not come. It doesn't mean that he's going to decommit. Doesn't mean any of that. But what it does mean for Ohio State recruiting is that you're getting two of the best players in this class to make trips to Ohio State. One, official visits coming in late November. Another visit is expected from Offord in late November, and you're getting Jahkeem Stewart this weekend. Twice in this amount of time for Stewart, a kid from Louisiana. That says some really good things about the Buckeyes recruiting in a time period when we're about to get into flip season. And if Stewart commits, that might see Ohio State get a flip from another top recruit who says, no, I'm not going to play there. I want to play with that guy, and I'm going to flip to be a Buckeye down the road. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first when everyone else overlooks it. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes on a Thursday. We'll see you next time.